Hey everyone, welcome. Hope this being the last month of class, you're all excited on the final papers. I have not seen any questions, also the final presentations. Um, Something you may want to add, especially if you are doing grant writing for group formation, is this week 10 about evaluation. So the PowerPoint we had for you from University of Cincinnati is here. So I'll get it moving and then dialogue a bit more about week 11. So let's see if this plays well.
Again, class, and welcome to our lecture on evaluation as part of our group skills and substance. In addition to an exploration of evaluation in group work, this lecture will also include specific descriptions of how the week's materials fit into your group project. As you know, your group project will describe a group intervention, and the proposal will describe the specific population you have selected, as well as the type and the purpose of the group. Further, your group will outline the screening criteria for members, as well as group size, the group goals, an exploration of legal, ethical, and cultural considerations for your group, and termination criteria and outcome measures. The final portion of your group project will be a member progress update created for a fictional member of the group that you've created. In this progress update, you will describe and summarize a fictional client's behavior within your group based on any information you choose to include. You must describe the client's progress and identify the needs and issues that may require a modification in your treatment plan. This progress report should be written from the perspective of the group leader following the 6th session of the group. Be sure to include initial goals and any modifications based on your report. Please refer to the assignment reading rubric for more information, and be sure to use the document as your primary source as your group puts together the group project. Keep in mind that I'm happy to read and provide feedback on drafts that I receive on or before the date outlined in your syllabus. As we look at the objectives for the week, I want to remind you to review the chapter for the week prior to viewing the lecture, as it's intended to supplement your reading. By the end of this week, you should be able to identify the benefits, evaluation, and steps for incorporating evaluation into the group experience, and identify and describe the necessary components in the development of a treatment update for a group member. So at this point, you should have a pretty good idea of the life of a group, beginning at the point where leaders come up with an idea and design and plan a group, as well as an understanding of the different stages that groups go through and the issues related to leadership and group dynamics, and even a bit about terming a group. Today, we're going to talk about the big question of how we know the group has worked. Pretty much regardless of your setting, you'll need to have evidence for the effectiveness of what it is you're doing. In the group context, we must show that the group makes some difference in the lives of our clients or adds value to the service we provide at that site. We could think of a college orientation process as a task group that provides new students with the information they need to thrive in their new environment. But how would we know if that orientation group was successful? Naturally, we would want to know the extent to which the program was effective in delivering the intended outcomes, and there are a couple of ways that we can go about evaluating those efforts. So first, what's evaluation? Evaluation is an ongoing process that benefits both the group members and the group leaders, and can track the progress of individual members and the groups as a whole. Evaluation can be understood as assigning a value or worth to something, and in many cases, we can think about using an evaluation to decide whether or not a group is worth the time and the resources that we invest in it. Evaluation provides information that can be used to improve group leadership or the overall group experience moving forward. It gives us an opportunity to measure and communicate what we're doing and how it's working. And it also gives us information on those areas that need improvement. Evaluation can also track individual progress. Evaluation can also track individual progress through client treatment plans and updates. So if we think about that college orientation group again, we would need to consider our intended goals and outcomes. What information were the students supposed to learn? What delivery methods did we provide? A brief survey could collect information on both student knowledge and student experience, with questions aimed to address whether or not they retained specific information, and other questions aimed to address the level of satisfaction. This evaluation could provide feedback on individual members. Did Monica learn where to get her student ID? And could also tell us on a larger scale how effective the overall group was. How many students could find the health center on a campus map? The evaluation can also be used to inform us where we might need to make improvements in the orientation program, and could also provide feedback on the overall enjoyment or satisfaction from the members. Keeping in mind that evaluation and the question of whether or not a group has worked will vary according to the situation and perspective, let's talk a little bit about some methods. Evaluation instruments may be self-designed or standardized, but conducting a thoughtful and intentional evaluation will lead to improvement in the design for future groups. Standardized scales exist as a way to offer greater statistical confidence in your findings, and they can be used to help demonstrate the effectiveness of your group. For instance, if you were running a psychoeducational group for teens at risk for alcohol use, you could have them take an alcohol awareness survey during the first session of the group, and then again at the end. Because your group was intended to raise awareness regarding the potentially damaging effects of alcohol, your sessions provided members with information and examples of these effects, and you would expect that the members would earn higher scores to participating in your group. You can also design scales or surveys that meet the needs of your particular group, but recognize that there are limits to the instruments because they've not been validated and may not be reliable. Despite these potential limitations, you may still decide to design your own instrument, and in doing so, it's important to keep your instrument brief, make sure that your questions are clearly worded, and that your questions are appropriate for the client age and developmental level. It's also important to avoid making assumptions of literacy in many situations, and making sure that group members will be equipped to read and respond to the surveys. A follow-up survey is one way to provide the opportunity for evaluation, and oftentimes members have different perceptions with a little distance, so you may wait a short time before sending it. Another way of evaluating a group is to have members provide feedback while the group is running. For instance, say I run a new activity in one session, and I'm interested in whether or not I might want to use it again for a future session. I could take a few minutes at the end of the group session to get feedback on what the participants learned or found to be the most and least useful. I want to try to do this at the end of the session rather than during a later session to ensure that the details are fresh and accessible for members. As a leader, I could also make observations regarding changes that I notice. For instance, if during a group session I introduce a concept of the group I statements in their communication rather than you in expressing their feelings, I may later observe that the communication pattern has shifted in the group and more members are using I statements. This kind of observation should be included in my leader notes. Once a group has concluded, it can be helpful to collect information on member satisfaction, progress towards specific goals, as well as group processes that occur within the group, like a sense of belonging and safety. To a certain extent, collecting information on each of these aspects throughout the life of the group can provide insights as well. We want to avoid doing so much evaluation that we interrupt group process, but it can be helpful to check in with group members once or twice, depending on your time frame, to get a sense for issues like satisfaction, progress towards goals, and group process. Your authors describe reflective evaluation as a process that comes out of leader observation and serves to monitor group mood, themes, cohesiveness, norms, power, roles, and defenses, as well as verbal and nonverbal participation and feedback. This can serve as an informal kind of evaluation, and these types of observations serve group leaders very well when leaders are able to journal, reflect, and then discuss these observations with a co-leader or supervisor. Keep in mind that co-leaders should meet following each session to discuss their experiences and reactions, and group leaders who are working individually would benefit from supervision in order to do the same. Leaders can provide feedback for each other, and video recording can be another helpful source of feedback, but take care with this suggestion as there are important ethical and legal considerations related to consent when you're thinking about doing recordings. So let's think a bit about your group project and how you'll incorporate evaluation into your proposal. How and when will group and individual outcomes be measured? To figure this out, you'll need to consider what the group and the individual goals are, how you're assigning worth and value to the experience, how you want to collect and analyze the information, and then what you'll do once you have that information. Your specific intervention may already have the answers to some of these questions, but as a group, you need to decide how you're going to do with the group and communicate your decisions in your project. So imagine that you are one of your clients whom you're likely to serve in your proposed group. Write down at least 2 reasons why they're coming to your group. Feel free to pause this or just go ahead and do it as you're talking. So of those 2 reasons why a group member might be coming to the group that you've proposed for your group project, pick one of these and then phrase it now as a vague goal the client might come to your group with. So what is a potential goal that a client might come to your proposed group with? Generally, clients want to feel better, but they may have other goals in groups, communicating better with a spouse, or stopping some kind of problematic behavior. So now what your job to do is to turn this into a SMART goal, but making sure that each of the requirements are satisfied. We want to look at these as we break it down. Is your goal specific? When it comes time to do an update, will the goal be clear enough to gauge any progress for you? As you go through each of these and you look back to the goal that you've created, you'll want to think about modifying that goal so that it does in fact meet these criteria. So the first one being, is your goal specific? Is it measurable? You should know how you'll measure your progress. Maybe there's a certain amount of time, a measurable increase or decrease in a certain behavior, but you'll want a way to make sure that you can measure progress towards your goal. Is your goal attainable? It's really important that members establish goals that are within their reach, as this promotes self-advocacy and can impact motivation for their clients. So you want to go back again, make sure that goal is something that's reasonable, that's attainable, that's within that client's ability. Is your goal relevant? Does it relate to the purpose of the group and the needs of the client? If your client comes in with a goal that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what your group's promoting, then they're setting themselves up to be in a bad situation because obviously your group will not be able to address that goal if it's something that's relevant to the time that you're spending together. Finally, is the goal time bound? Are you clear about when you could expect this goal to be achieved? Having that kind of specific time frame helps the goal become real and actionable, because now we have an idea for when it could actually be accomplished. So again, you'll want to go through, use this slide again as you're developing the goals for your group proposal, and make sure that each of your goals hits all 5 of these basic necessities in terms of creating SMART goals. So now that you have an idea of what an example could be a SMART goal for a fictional group member, let's talk about the treatment update, the final portion of your group project. Treatment plans and treatment updates will vary from setting to setting, agency to agency. For the purposes of our work together, the treatment update that you'll provide as part of your group project will be written about a fictional group member following your 6th session together. The treatment update must include information on each of the following sections: the client's general behavior, motivation, initial goals and progress towards those, as well as any verbal or nonverbal and resistant behavior from group sessions, and current needs that you're aware of, any modifications that are required for the treatment plan. In each of these sections, take time to include material from your reading and lecture materials, citing specific behaviors and group dynamics as appropriate. So I offer this treatment plan update as a starting point for anyone who might be interested, Although I'm happy to accept other formats as well, just be sure to refer to the group project assignment and grading rubric to be sure that you've fulfilled all of the requirements. Here you'll see room to include your group, the date of the treatment update, as well as the date of the first group session and the number of the group sessions. Next, you'll include the presenting concern that brought the member to the group. This can be a brief overview and need not be more than 1 to 3 sentences. Next, you'll want to include the individual goal or goals that the group member designated at the beginning of the group. Make sure that these are SMART goals, and feel free to return to the earlier slide for help creating SMART goals. Indicate the intended completion date and the progress that the member has made toward that goal. Are they on track? Has there been a setback? Did they successfully achieve that goal already? Finally, document any changes to the goal or the completion date for that goal based on the progress update for your goal. The next space contains an opportunity for you as a group leader to include your observations regarding behavior, motivation, participation, and possible resistant behavior. This is where your group may need to refer back to earlier lecture and reading materials in order to incorporate and of course information regarding group dynamics and member behavior. This section of the project is an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to identify and describe client behaviors within a group. Finally, you must describe any current needs that may be present. These could be housing needs or other support issues, and may also include some strategies for meeting these needs. Strategies may be within the group leader's ability, or they may include finding an outside resource to help the client. So as we wrap up this lecture on evaluation, let's review a few important points. Evaluation is an ongoing process that affects both group members and leaders and can track the progress of individual members and the group as a whole. Evaluation of the group as a whole can be conducted through formal measures like surveys or scales that members fill out during or after the completion of a group, and may measure things like satisfaction, progress towards goals, and group process. Evaluation can also be done through more informal exercises, like asking for verbal reflection from group members, or group co-leaders taking time to reflect on observations and experiences after each session to make notes on significant events or opportunities to improve the group. Evaluation provides information that can be used to improve group leadership or the overall group experience moving forward. It gives us an opportunity to measure and communicate what we're doing and how it's working, and it also gives us information on the areas that might need improvement. Evaluation can also track individual progress through client plans and updates. For your group project, you'll need to take some time to consider what outcome measures you would like to use to evaluate the effectiveness of your group, and make sure that these measures are in line with the overall type and purpose of your group. Also, your client treatment update is an opportunity to evaluate a fictional member of the group and their progress towards SMART goals that you have decided on together. Please use this as an opportunity to demonstrate your mastery of the material on group dynamics and member behaviors, and refer back to previous lectures as needed. Finally, keep in mind that I'm willing to look over any drafts that I receive on or before the date outlined in your syllabus. Thanks for listening to the lecture. Have a great week.
All right, so I also wanted to get into week 11 a little early just to give you guys a head start. But good description of everything there for what's going on with the final project, but some of the same items Jen and I had for this class, I had for you guys. So, and if you are leading a group for a specific population, I want to go ahead and jump into next week now, just so you have this ahead of time. And then we'll kind of get into leading the groups, and hopefully some of you coming in person. I know some are doing it digital, but let's get them done April 30th. So that would be April 29th is 3 weeks from now, so come either the 15th, 22nd, or 29th. And we'll see you lead those, and we can go over the final paper stuff too. So for specific populations, groups for adults and older adults, if you were to lead groups here, even at hospice that I have, that's what this kind of focuses on to finish up this week.
At this point, you should know to review the chapters for this week before viewing the lecture, as it is intended to supplement your reading. By the end of the week, you should be able to identify and describe the key principles in working with groups for adults and older adults. As we talk about adults this week, we are covering a wide range here, from 20 to 65 years old. Young adults can be considered those between 20 and 40, and those individuals between 40 and 65 are classified as midlife. Within this population, we have a huge variety of experiences and many different levels of physical, mental, social, and emotional maturity. Once again, a knowledge of human development is helpful as we consider that young adults tend to be dealing with issues related to identity and intimacy, while adults in midlife tend to be dealing with issues related to generativity, a time when individuals consider the contributions they make to the world. It's worth noting that men and women have shown to approach generativity differently, as do adults with special needs and developmental concerns. Keeping in mind all of these things, there are a wide variety of groups that exist for adult members. In fact, adults have the largest pool of groups from which to choose. Adults may participate in work and task groups as part of their job, volunteer, or community activities. As you view the lecture, you may be able to think about the various groups in which you are a member, and chances are, if we were to take a poll, the responses would vary from task groups to psychotherapy groups and everything in between. Setting up groups for adults demands attention to the themes and needs of the members of the group. We'll look at a few different examples of groups for adults on the next slide, and we'll soon see that the variety is too great for us to draw any simple conclusions on an appropriate size or other specifications for groups for this population. The size depends on the type of group, the purpose, the setting, etc. Instead, as I mentioned, themes and needs are a helpful way to frame the discussion. We can understand themes to describe the particular interest or concern that a group focuses on, whether it be a group centered on career counseling or alcohol use. In order to be effective for members, the topics in theme-based groups must reflect the real-world situations and stay connected to teaching life skills or lessons related to that subject area. Member needs are the second important consideration when conceptualizing groups for adults. We must consider what are the potential barriers or challenges that members face. Regardless of themes and needs, however, all groups that serve adults must be clear regarding their purpose, membership criteria, rules, and expectations, as well as being sensitive to legal, ethical, and multicultural issues. When working with adults, the role of the leader also varies according to group type, membership, and format. Some leaders, for instance, those providing leadership for psychoeducational groups, whose purpose is to impart information or facilitate skill building, must plan carefully what they're going to do and structure their groups accordingly. In a counseling or psychotherapy group, however, leaders tend to be guided by their theoretical orientation, and leaders might approach the same group scenario in different ways based on the counseling theory that they endorse. Certain agencies may adopt a specific approach to working with clients, for instance, cognitive behavioral theory, and the theory and research for this approach are what guides the leader in developing and implementing the group. We've already explored the skills that leaders use in their work, and before beginning a group for adults, leaders will want to review these skills and make sure that they have mastered them. On page 278 of your text, the author begins an exploration of studies on the outcomes of groups for adults. The pages that follow provide some helpful information regarding the research that has been done on the effectiveness of some specific groups, with attention to college students and adults in midlife. Let's take a moment to talk about group work with college students. Working with college students in a group context has been shown to be quite effective. Many college students struggle with similar issues related to fear of failure, mild depression, anxiety, self-esteem, body image, and interpersonal relationships. Research indicates that the most effective groups for college students are closed format groups that run 10 to 12 sessions. Psychoeducational groups for college students can address issues like self-esteem, public speaking, depression management, stress management, disordered eating, and academic support. Additionally, psychoeducational groups can be helpful for college students who are outside the traditional age range and can offer information and resources for their academic, social, and emotional needs. Additional examples of groups found on the college campus may include those for students who are survivors of sexual assault, students experiencing homesickness, suffering grief or loss, or are exploring issues of sexual orientation. With respect to adults in midlife, your text explores a variety of groups, including those for adult children of alcoholics, victims of abuse and survivors of suicide, groups specifically for men and for women, groups for couples, families, and people who are divorced, widowed, and remarried. You can refer to your text for more information, but regardless of differences in the specifics, all of these groups require attention to the issue of membership, structure, goals, and evaluation that we've been exploring in the past weeks. The strengths and limitations for working with adults should be familiar to you from previous readings and lectures. Some of the strengths include the cost effectiveness of having one or two group leaders working with people during a single time frame, and other strengths are related to the opportunity for members to change unwanted behaviors and learn new information and skills in a supportive environment. One limitation in group work with adults is scheduling. For children and for adolescents, the school setting is conducive to coordinating member availability and for providing a convenient location for members to meet. For adults, however, it can be challenging to find a time and a place that works for all the members. For adults may be more hesitant to participate in groups, may have preconceptions or reservations related to group treatment, and finally, adults are more likely to have created behavioral patterns that can be difficult to change, and it may take longer for them to learn new ways of behaving to replace those old patterns. As we move now to look at our final population, older adults, we actually enter our largest span, ranging from mid-60s all the way to 120 years of age. Older adults have not always received the attention that they deserve, and it's worth noting that this is a population that's growing. Mental health services are also growing to meet the needs of the population, but myths and stereotypes still threaten the services that older adults receive. Ageism, which is discrimination against older people, can lead to an attitude bias against working with older adults, despite the fact that older adults are often excellent candidates for service, especially group work. And psychoeducational groups may have great benefits for older adults who can experience problems associated with limited socialization and interpersonal activities, and can provide an opportunity for connection. Organizations like the AARP and the Great Panthers provide groups that focus on issues dealing with universal health care, jobs with a living wage, and affordable housing. The groups can provide both meaning and service for older adults. Another example of psychoeducational groups for older adults exists for those who are not as physically able and require long-term care. Long-term care facilities may offer groups that are kept to about 8 to 12 members of similar cognitive ability and provide social and cognitive stimulation that can help members maintain a higher state of functioning than if they were without these services. Your authors also address 7 groups of counseling and psychotherapy groups for older adults. You can refer to page 3 to review these groups. Even if you do not intend to work directly with older adults in the future, becoming familiar with these different groups can enable you to provide helpful resources for your clients as they age, or for family members who might benefit from the services. As we think about setting up groups for older adults, you'll notice that with careful thought and consideration, a few important adjustments can increase the effectiveness of working with this population. All groups, the purpose of the group must be clear so that members can make an informed decision regarding participation. For older adults, group leaders should make clear the goals for the group and how members might benefit from participation. Membership criteria and screening procedures must also be clear so that leaders and members are intentional in how the group is formed. The physical environment is also worth mentioning when considering older adults. In all group work, the meeting room should be functional, quiet, and geared towards comfort. With older adults, an ideal location may be on the ground floor and is equipped with upholstered chairs, good lighting, space for wheelchairs, and near a restroom. You may also consider hearing impairment and adjust by keeping the group in a small circle. Scheduling is also important with older adults. Early evening and nights might be difficult for members who don't drive during these hours and prefer to go to bed early. By learning about member schedules, a convenient meeting time can be established and then maintained in order to maximize attendance. A final consideration relates to physical ability. Older adults may be more likely to experience physical disability or sensory impairment, both of which can contribute to social isolation. Including a warm-up activity or some kind of brief informational presentation before the group can help members get comfortable and become familiar with the group's focus for the day. Generally, groups for older adults tend to be smaller in size, about 4 to 8 members, and are encouraged to socialize outside of the group context as a way to help break down social barriers that may serve to isolate them. A few quick words about the role of the leader when working with older adults. Leaders must realize that the pace when working with this population may be a bit slower, and the goals may be more limited than for most other groups. Group leaders must maintain an accepting, patient, and positive attitude, reinforcing change and encouraging participation. On the age and health of members, long-term goals may not be appropriate, and instead leaders can encourage members to develop and strive towards short-term goals and objectives. Leaders can rely on all of the skills that we've previously discussed and may be well served to attend to certain key issues like religion, economics, intergenerational conflict within families, and loss, all of which are common themes with older age groups. Remaining sensitive to issues of aging and death, leaders must come to terms with their own aging and eventual death as a way to enable them to engage in meaningful discussions. As with anything, we as counselors cannot expect clients to explore difficult issues if we ourselves are not willing to do the work as well. The body of research on groups with older adults is growing, and there does seem to be evidence that group work is effective with this population. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, older adults can greatly benefit from participation in the group context. For one thing, older adults can improve both the quality and the quantity of their interpersonal relationships, developing and deepening connections with others, which can put a sense of community and a feeling of belonging. Groups can also offer older adults an opportunity to try new behaviors, gain new knowledge, and enhance self-concept. On the other hand, groups can force members to face issues of loss, and although it's true in all groups with older adults may experience the loss of a member either during or shortly after a group ends. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, groups with older adults are often limited to addressing short-term goals. As we wrap up our lecture on adults and older adults, let's review a few important points. Adulthood between early 20s and mid-60s is a time characterized by many problems and possibilities, and group work helps individuals in all stages of adulthood to clarify their focus and maximize their potential. Group work with older adults is still a relatively young field and is increasing in response to a more full understanding of this growing population. Setting up a group for older adults depends on the member's needs, and some minor adjustments can promote a more comfortable and effective experience for the members. Finally, as with many issues, group leaders must consider their own prejudices related to age, aging, and death in order to best serve our clients. Irvin Yalom, who is the author of The Schopenhauer Cure, has written extensively, and I would recommend another one of his titles, The Gift of Therapy, which provides a lot of great information for beginning therapists, and specifically a good deal of wisdom related to death and dying. I encourage you to look it up. This concludes.
So as you can see, adult groups can have a wide range. Like you've got people in so many different psychosocial developmental areas. You've got possible graduating seniors on an IEP. They can go up to 21 or almost 22 years old. College folks, especially those that could take 5 or 6 years to graduate, could be 24, 25, 26. Grad school folks go in their 30s and 40s. People with a family, men have kids in their 40s and 50s, women up to 40, and then the older adult population, they mentioned about like visiting nursing homes and whatnot. That is a population you may have to create groups for. So I wanted to put that one out there too, because it definitely is a large need, and there is good amounts of money for leading groups, even paid internships. So if any of you are doing your internship for graduate school, his name is Dr. Dave Turner at the Counseling Source, and he hires for folks that are doing internships. And if you go on to grad school, I think it's like 28 per hour and then 35 per hour if you got your license right after you graduate. And if you get a social work trainee license in grad school. So that again is visiting nursing homes, sometimes running groups at nursing homes. So I did put up examples for you of a few what it would look like to write your final paper. We had to write a grant for Lighthouse Youth Services, so that one is in there. That was the Ending Homelessness by 2020. So that's a good example. We also wrote a grant for the refugee garden that was $100,000 to $200,000 for Lighthouse Youth Services. So that was a good one. Something to consider and recommend. And then seeing if I can pull this up on the screen for you. Not, it is in Schoology. So have no fear. We will have examples for you. And let me know if you have any questions, because it is definitely go time. So getting your group together for next week or the week after, and then writing your final paper for the week after that, having it due the 30th, because there are some graduating seniors and you can finish before everybody. So that is all I have for today, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. So have a good weekend.